New threats by President Trump regarding the partial federal government shutdown, now in its third week. The president now says he's willing to let the shutdown last for months or even years.
We told the president we needed the government open. He resisted. In fact, he said he'd keep the government closed for a very long period of time, months or even years.
Major, go ahead. Sure.
Mr. President, Senator Schumer came out and said that the meeting from his point of view and Speaker Pelosi's was contentious. He also said, you said in the meeting, this is him quoting you, I just want to check, that the shutdown could go on for months or even a year or longer. Did you say that? And is that your...
I did.
Is that your assessment of where we are?
Absolutely, I said that. I don't call it a shutdown. I call it doing what you have to do.
President Trump said that may mean keeping the government closed for months or even years.
If we have to stay out for a very long period of time, we're going to do that.
He dug in on demands for his key campaign promise and insisted for the first time that he won't let Congress be the barrier to building a wall.
I may do it, but we can call a national emergency and build it very quickly.
A national emergency would let the president tap Pentagon funds to begin wall construction without congressional approval.
The president also suggested he could build the wall without congressional approval by declaring a national emergency.
The president also said if Democrats in Congress don't give him $5.6 billion for construction of a border wall, he could use emergency powers to divert Pentagon funds for that purpose.
We can call a national emergency because of the security of our country, absolutely. No, we can do it. I haven't done it. I may do it. I may do it.
Even as hundreds of thousands of federal workers fret about missing their next paycheck, Mr. Trump's cabinet secretaries, Vice President Pence, and other senior administration officials are due to receive a roughly $10,000 raise starting tomorrow because of a quirk in the law.
I heard you use the word crisis. I heard you use the word emergency, citing this Post piece. So is this a signal that the president will declare one at some point, perhaps this week?
Well, as he has said, it's something that he's looking at and considering.
I may declare a national emergency dependent on what's going to happen over the next few days.
Right. And on that point, so every year the government pays out billions in tax refunds. What will a delay in returns mean for the greater economy without that money in circulation?
Yeah, I mean, it's $140 billion in February. It's with a B, okay?
Right.
And that's a tremendous amount of money. That could single-handedly, push the country towards a recession if that money is not put into the economy. A lot of people get their tax refunds and go immediately spend it on something, or they pay down their credit card. This money gets pumped back into the economy quickly, and we've never had a situation before where this just doesn't happen.
Use the R word, though. I want to be very clear here. I mean, is that a realistic possibility that, in fact, not having that money in circulation could, in fact, drag down things economically so far that it could push the country into recession?
This idea that this money will not be put into circulation, this $140 billion, then you're pushing it really close to a possible recession scenario. Recession means that essentially that the government does not grow and it contracts. The economy contracts over the course of a period. So, as these things begin to snowball, so if people don't get their tax refunds, they stop buying things, then companies get hit and they don't reinvest or hire new workers. All those things can kind of collide into a big economic mess. And I think we're anticipating that will happen in February unless all these things get resolved quickly.
You ran your campaign promising supporters that Mexico is going to pay for the wall and that the wall was going to be made of concrete. You just said earlier that the wall could be made of steel, and right now our government is shut down over a demand from your administration that the American taxpayer pay for the wall. So how can you say you're not failing on that promise to your supporters?
Very nice question, so beautifully asked, even though I just answered it.
You didn't answer.
Look, let me just tell you,
excuse me,
are you ready? Are you ready? I just told you that we just made a trade deal, and we will take in billions and billions of dollars, far more than the cost of the wall. The wall is peanuts compared to what the value of this trade deal is to the United States. As far as concrete, I said I was going to build a wall. I never said, I'm going to build the concrete. I said I'm going to build a wall. Just so you don't, because I know you're not into the construction business, you don't understand something. We now have a great steel business that's rebuilt in the United States. Steel. is stronger than concrete.
President Trump is refusing to end the shutdown until he gets $5 billion for a border wall. But Democrats have a plan. They're going to make Trump wear one of those blindfolds from Bird Box and just tell him there's a wall. Don't take it off. Don't take it off.
Is that a wall?
The president was asked about all the unpaid federal workers who are struggling to pay their bills, and Trump responded saying that he, quote, can relate. It makes sense. I mean, no one's more relatable than Donald Trump, right? He's just a regular working class family man.
So many programs affected by this shutdown. Turns out the government does a lot of things. Who knew? Including food stamps, subsidized school lunches, the EPA, the USDA, and the Smithsonian and National Zoo. And you can tell they're upset about it if you look at the National Zoo's Panda Cam.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders tweeted today that President Trump will travel to the southern border on Thursday. And what do you know? Mexico finally started building that wall.
As the partial government shutdown enters week 3 with no end in sight, we're getting a picture of how the fight in Washington could affect people across the rest of the country. If Congress and the White House can't come to a deal to fund a quarter of the government by February, millions of Americans who receive benefits from the country's food stamp program, SNAP, risk having their assistance cut off. The IRS has also been forced to send home 90% of its employees ahead of its busiest season. That could delay tax refunds.
In the U.S. Capitol, it's do not enter, stay out, closed for business.
If you come to D.C. to visit, you can visit the Lincoln Memorial, but the toilets are closed, the gift shop is closed, and the park police patrolling and protecting this area, they're not getting paid. We're into the 3rd week now of this government shutdown. 800,000 federal workers furloughed or working without pay. And as every day progresses, the concern is that the fallout is going to spread. A new day of the government shutdown bringing new concerns about the impact on Americans, especially those relying on the federal government to get by. One of the programs in jeopardy, food stamps. Nearly 39 million people use it to feed their families, and it's quickly running out of funding.
I won't be able to come in here and buy my groceries.
Getting married? Lovebirds in the nation's capital may have to put those wedding bells on hold after the Marriage Bureau that issues licenses in D.C. was closed.
Empty pockets of all personal effects, please.
The paychecks for TSA officers won't land in their bank accounts later this week if the government still has the out-of-office message. Some of those screeners calling out sick in protest, though the TSA union is urging them not to.
The standoff is also now affecting travelers. Wait times are up at many airports as some screeners call out sick rather than work without pay.
Flyers at New York's LaGuardia Airport yesterday had to wait in nearly hour-long security lines. The TSA blamed a higher-than-expected number of travelers coupled with mismanaged resources for the delays. But the agency is worried lines will get longer if more TSA screeners call out sick due to the ongoing government shutdown. TSA officials are concerned Friday's payroll deadline, when screeners will miss their first paychecks, could be a tipping point. Many of the more than 51,000 screeners cannot afford to miss a check, and officials fear they may not come to work.
The Airline Pilots Association calling on President Trump to end it, concerned that with air traffic controllers potentially and also TSA officers potentially working without pay, it puts the nation's airspace at risk.
800,000 federal workers are not being paid. Farmers aren't getting their government subsidies. Pilots are warning about airline security as TSA officers work without paychecks. Christine Vittel, a single mother, works for the TSA at Chicago O'Hare.
I live 39 miles away from the airport. That's one way. My gas is what takes up my money, right? I could go probably one more pay period without getting paid, but most people can't go one more day.
The president doesn't understand that we are human beings. We are people. Federal workers, that's just like, the words, federal workers. No. I am the federal worker. He is the federal worker. We are people. We have bills to pay. We have food we need to eat to survive, just like everybody else. It's not a game to us. I mean, it seems like it's a game to him. Oh, I'll keep the government shut down for months, for years. Well, what about the 800,000 people? Do you even care? Do you have a heart?
800,000 federal employees have been furloughed or are working without pay. The Smithsonian's museums, the National Zoo, and National Gallery are closed. You'll also see nothing on the live web feed of the National Zoo's Panda Cam, which ceased broadcasting on Wednesday. Most NASA employees are on furlough, except for those deemed essential to, quote, prevent imminent threats to human life or the protection of property, though they are working without pay.